father practiced, I'm still going to practice the same. There are booming sectors. Okay, we basically have 7 sectors that constitute the Nigerian GDP structure. But the major one is oil. What about agriculture? What about banking? What about telecommunication industry? These are sectors that, like, if government would focus on these sectors, you understand, definitely our GDP would increase, would have increase in revenue, and would witness economic growth and eventual development. But not just to focus on just oil. What now? Okay, now oil has a price volatility. It's a natural resource, as I said. We don't have control over that. What if the oil dries up today? What happens? What now if the prices of oil crashes to $10 or $20? What happens? The benchmark was at the oil price is going to be sold at what? 50. I think it's 57, right?
Yeah, 57.
57. But what if now it drops to, let's say, 20 or 30? Because we witnessed that some times ago. Though the price is quite okay now, I think it's sold about around $87 barrel per day. You understand? What if the prices crashes? What if our quota is being reduced by OPEC? Because even the production now is being controlled by OPEC. Every country, the oil-producing countries have their own quotas. If now, what happens when when the quota is reduced? So let's look at other sectors, diversify.
So now in diversification now, what are the major ways we can use to generate more income in terms of diversification of the economy from agri and telecommunication?
Okay, Isa, let me tell you something. Majorly, everywhere in the world, the major components of financing budget is taxation. Traditionally is taxation. How much do we receive in tax in the country? I'm not advocating for tax increment. You understand? I'm not advocating for tax increment.
Especially at this point in time.
Especially at this point in time.
Okay.
But what's the tax base itself? How many people pay tax? How many people pay tax in the country? How many businesses are in the formal sector? Mr. Isa, you know very well, go to North, go to Kaduna, go to Kano, go to Sokoto, go to Zamfara. How many businesses are there, multi-million businesses, that are not formalized? They are not registered. Nobody taxes them. And these are businesses that make millions. They are not being formalized. We don't have to increase the tax rate. We don't
have to widen the tax.
That is just it. Assuming you are taxing 10 million businesses, you now not spread your tentacles to 15 million. That will automatically increase your revenue. Because
actually, I saw that happening. If you look at Lagos, basically,
as
a result of the tax they generate, they used to work.
Not only Lagos, look at Kaduna. Look at Kaduna State.
Yeah, exactly.
Now in the north, Kaduna is the highest state with the highest internal generated revenue. In the north, before it used to be Kano. And what necessitated to that is the taxation. The government looks for different ways to generate revenues.
So beyond taxation, or let me say still fixed on that issue of taxation, looking critically now, some states are complaining that they don't even have enough infrastructure, enough business to even tax. And as a result of that, that's why you see every month or every year you go to share the federal allocation. And those are the issues that we are still being disturbed about.
You don't have infrastructure. Let me tell you something, Isa. This government keeps borrowing to finance infrastructure. There is nothing wrong in that. There is nothing actually wrong in borrowing to finance infrastructure. There is nothing there is nothing wrong in that. If the money will judiciously be used to develop infrastructure, because they have effects, and there is even a reason for that. Because basically, you don't expect to use our present resources to develop infrastructure in its entirety. Why? Because we are not the only users of the infrastructure. There are generations to come. So we can't just pay for the generations to come. We have to spread the cost to them. So when we borrow, for instance, we construct roads. I pay part of it during my lifetime. When my children comes, they will still pay part of their own, because they will still use the infrastructure. But you see, there is nothing wrong in that.
But then the major complaint has been, if you keep borrowing, and then you also have the issue of corruption by the side. People still complain that, okay, some persons in government are not giving us a very transparent form of leadership. I'm not referring to anybody here, but then we still have issues of corruption, where you see people, they have money, but the implementation process is still bad. So what can you say about that? Because that has been the major concern of Nigeria in terms of the issue of borrowing.
Exactly. The issue of borrowing. But okay, for instance, now when I look at this budget, particularly, and when you listen to the Mr. President's speech, when you listen to the Minister of Finance speech, is a rhetoric. It has become a rhetoric now that we do not have debt problem in the country. Yes, I may agree with that. We do not have debt crisis in the country. Why? Because traditionally, if your budget threshold, your budget to income, your debt to GDP ratio is below 40%, you are safe. And obviously today, our debt to GDP ratio is below 40%. That is okay.
By World Bank standard?
Yes. You understand? But you don't only look at that parameter. You look at two parameters: debt to GDP ratio and revenue to GDP. And debt to revenue. Okay, debt to GDP is okay, is below 40%. Then how about debt to how about revenue to GDP? When you are using 80 to 90% of your budget of your revenue to service loan, to service debts, there is a problem. There is a problem.
But let me just give you a quick one of what the president presented to the National Assembly. 6.26 trillion deficit, and then we have 1.728 trillion retained GOE revenue, 1.816 trillion, and then 2.132 trillion in terms of taxes that will be generated. Now, in terms of generation tax, in order to fund this budget or to implement the budget, what is your major advice to the government in this aspect?
Okay, as I said earlier, in terms of taxation, we just need to increase our tax base. You don't have to go to the far or to the extent of increasing the rates. You may increase the rate with 1%, 0.4%, fine. Just increase the tax rate.
Tax net.
Like the tax base. Those taxable businesses, it doesn't have to necessarily be a personal income tax. Those taxable businesses, they could be taxed and they will happily pay. Because if you have created an